St. Paul says, for freedom, Christ sets us free. For freedom, Christ sets us free. And we are getting ready here. This is our 4th of July weekend. And freedom is something that we talk about a lot in our country. We cherish that. We cherish our freedom, and it's a really important thing. And so I think it's important because it's connected, really, to what we mean here. St. Paul is giving this beautiful explanation in today's reading about freedom and what it means, in a biblical sense, and also that, of course, applies then for all of us in our civil sense and in every other sense of the word as well. And so one of the things, just wanted to look at that, St. Paul makes it really clear, first of all, that freedom, the freedom that he's talking about, is not freedom to do whatever I want. He goes into that and explains that throughout the reading, right? It is not the ability to do whatever I want. He's really clear about that. And if we think about it a little bit, although that notion is out there in our world and in some places that I'm not truly free unless I get to do whatever I want, most of us realize that freedom is bounded, if it really is freedom, right? There's going to be limitations. So we call that, when we think about freedom being doing whatever I want to do, we call that license. That's not what we mean, right? We mean freedom in the sense of in another way, and that's what we want to look at a little bit more. What St. Paul is talking about is he's saying it is not freedom from the laws of God that are handed on to us through the church. He's saying it's not freedom from them. He's saying there's a freedom that's found from living them. It's very different, right? There's not many words that are different there, but there's an infinite difference in their meaning. St. Paul is telling us, and the church teaches this, John Paul II, who lived under all kinds of tyrannical governments and different forms, said this over and over again through his pontificate. The true understanding of freedom is not found by living apart from the laws of God. It is found from living them. And that's what St. Paul is talking about. Freedom, in the true sense, is found from living the laws of God that are handed on to me through the church. A couple of important notes. The laws of God that are given to us through the church are not affected at all by government. The laws that are given to us by God through the church are not affected at all by the government, by the laws of the land. There have been, basically from the very beginning of the church all the way through today, there have been different governments in different forms, kings, Caesars, rulers, whatever it is, that have sought to rule and legislate and tell the church what the laws given to it by God ought to be. And the church has repeatedly stood up and died in the face of that, rather than change, because we cannot change the laws that are given to us by God through His church. Another thing that's really important about that is that we can try to bring our laws that God has given to us through the church into government, into the rule of the law of the land. Some places, there have been times where Christians have been very successful in being able to do that, to influence the laws of the land and align them fairly well, lined up with the laws that God has given to us. Our country has been very blessed over its 200 plus years to have a country and to live in a country and in a place where that has largely been the case. There are other places around the world today where the laws of the land are almost the complete opposite of the laws that God has given to us through the church. So you and I are called to work in the civil realm. We're not called to just come here and pray and then leave our faith at the door. We're called to try and do what we can to gather other people to help convince, sway, bring people with us, explain to them why the laws of God ought to be brought into the laws of the land. Right? We are allowed to do that. But the government has never and will never be able to tell us what the laws of God are, because they're laws of God, not laws that change. So this idea of freedom, again, coming back to that, freedom comes from following those laws and living them. not from ignoring them or walking away from them. And I just wanted to share just a really brief example here at the end. I was asked at the beginning of the summer to help coach a Little League baseball team for there were some parishioners that were on the team, but there wasn't enough coaches to go around. So I said, well, yeah, I'll dust the whistle off. Let's do this. So I've been coaching Little League baseball on Saturday mornings throughout this summer. And it's been a blast. Right? The very first time I showed up, I realized they were running to first and then stopping. And I'm like, no, you hit it really far. And they're like, no, the rule says we stop at first. I'm like, oh, it does. Okay, thanks for telling me the rules, right? And talking with the people who run the league, these are little kids, right? So they've been bringing the young people along. It's like, okay, now we're going to introduce the idea that you can actually tag a runner out, which sort of led to almost bloody noses when people are shoving the ball and tackling each other. So then okay, you can't tackle, but you can tag, all these things, everything. It's been a blast. It's been great for me. The laws, it takes a long time, right? And there are even rules that at the end of this season, we still have it. We were talking today as all the other coaches and people who help, we were like, we've still got a lot of rules to teach them next year that we didn't even get to this year, right? But it's a gradual process. But slowly over time, we learn those laws, right? And in the same way for us, it takes us a long time to learn the laws that God has given to us. We spend time in prayer. Hopefully, maybe we were raised in the faith or whatever it might be, but we learn the rules over time, the rules that God has given to us. We learn them, and we choose whether we're going to incorporate them into our lives or not. Now, to wrap up that analogy of Little League baseball. This afternoon, I was watching the Yankees and Red Sox. They're playing over in London. First time ever baseball's been played over Major League Baseball in Europe. There was such a freedom and a beauty to the game. There always is to professional sports, right? All the women's soccer that's going on right now, the World Cup. There's a beauty to watching people play, and the beauty about it comes precisely from the fact that they all recognize the rules and live them. They've all accepted them. And because of that, because they've lived it so long and they've practiced so much and have lived those rules and worked on every little single element of that game for their entire life and the rules and all that stuff, there's a freedom that comes from that because they all recognize and know what they're doing. Yeah, they were arguing with the ref over strike calls and that kind of thing, or no, he was safe, yeah, he was out, those kind of things. But they weren't arguing about whether or not we should have outs at all. No one was saying, no, you know what, I think what we should do is have 7 strikes. They were arguing with the little details. But they all knew the rules. Precisely when the rules are followed, embraced, and understood and lived, beautiful things happen in the wake of that. And it's the same for us, and that's what St. Paul is trying to say. It's what John Paul II was trying to say, and countless other saints, encouraging us, take these laws of the church and live them. Take them and live them, and you will find freedom. The freedom that comes from beautiful things. The beauty that comes from following the laws of God is not a nice baseball game. It's sainthood. It's a holy life that is not able to be destroyed by suffering. It's not able to be destroyed by pain or any other thing. Not able to be destroyed by the government or any external whatever. The beauty that comes from following the laws of God and internalizing them and living them day in and day out is the beauty of a life well lived that we call saints. We pray that we might hear St. Paul's call to us, an invitation to live the laws of God and thus to find the freedom that he promises.